you're watching Encore. Coming up in today's film show, we reflect on this year's Cannes Film Festival. Paul Verhoeven thrills and disquiets with new release Elle, and Mr. Gaga dazzles in a documentary on dance.
Do you mind if this young lass signs on first?
No, you carry on.
There you go. Now you can go back to your desk and let her sign on and do the job that the taxpayer pays you for.
Qu'est-ce que tu fous là, toi? Allez, rentre.
Dance started in my life as long as I remember myself. I dance every day, and I want everybody to do it.
Well, I'm joined as ever by Lisa Nesselson, our film critic. Hello, Lisa. Now, you're fresh from the Croisette, that is the Cannes red carpet. This was your 29th expedition to the festival. Was it a good year for you?
You know, it was a pretty good year in terms of the films, but it was bat excrement crazy in terms of the awards. Now, obviously, the members of the jury, and they're all very talented, accomplished individuals, saw something rather different when they were watching the movies from other people, say the 4,000 or so journalists and critics who were in attendance. This year, I think, is the very best example I have ever seen of how inherently silly it is to try and guess who or what might win a prize at a festival. Colleagues wrote with great authority that this or that was going to win a prize, and they completely missed the boat. I mean, there weren't enough life preservers to send out to the people who missed that particular boat. It wasn't so much the top prize for me as all the others. There were at least 3 other films I would have been happy to see win the top prize, the Palme d'Or, but I have no objections to the quality of Ken Loach's Golden Palm winner, Daniel Blake. Now, Loach, who will turn 80 this year, he joins a small club of people who have not one, but 2 Golden Palms. He won 10 years ago for The Wind That Shakes the Barley, and his entire career, going back 5 decades, has been devoted to telling stories about the lives of ordinary working people facing all too real obstacles imposed by the system, with a capital S. He's a proud socialist, and I am told he actually gives away all of the money that he doesn't personally need to live on. In the film, the title character is a skilled carpenter who can't go back to work after he suffers a heart attack on the job, and he's been paying into the system for almost 40 years, and he needs financial aid to pay his bills. But austerity measures and hard-hearted stupidity, there's no other word for it, stack the deck against him. Now, Ken Loach reminds us that even when people are in the most dire circumstances, they don't walk around depressed all of the time. You know, they have a laugh, they see their friends, they go about their business. Daniel Blake befriends a young widow with children, trying to keep her head above water. The film is set in Newcastle. It's compassionate, it's informative, it doesn't set the world on fire in terms of filmmaking, but it is very well acted, very involving. And here is Mr. Loach speaking to France 24 not long after he won the Palme.
The film is about those who are marginalised within their own country, in a way. In England, in Britain, it's the people who are desperately poor, who have to choose between eating and keeping warm. So it's not inappropriate to say that we hope it has something to say to all those who are oppressed.
You can say that's one prize you do agree with, but what about other choices you found more questionable, perhaps?
Well, I'd like to go on about this, but my jaw, I think, is still on the floor back in Cannes, which makes it kind of hard to speak. Canadian whiz kid Xavier Dolan, let's start with him, won the second prize for what most observers believe to be his most grating and annoying film to date. Andrea Arnold of Britain won the third place prize for the third time, and in her third appearance in competition, for her bloating, rambling, deeply annoying road movie shot in the U.S., starring a mostly amateur cast of energetic youngsters who go door to door selling magazine subscriptions in American honey. But her 2-hour and 42-minute viewing ordeal at least had some scenes that convinced. Shia LaBeouf is surprisingly effective in the scenes where he modifies his sales patter to suit the prospective customers, sizing them up in record time. That next to nothing was compelling for me about Personal Shopper, for which French writer-director Olivier Assayas shared the directing prize with a very good Romanian film by Cristian Mungiu called Graduation. Now, you may remember Assayas made Clouds of Sils Maria in English 2 years ago, and he so enjoyed working with Kristen Stewart that here he wrote a whole movie for her to star in. So Stewart plays a young American in Paris who happens to be a medium, and she's waiting for a sign from the beyond, from someone very dear to her who has recently died. She earns her living, as so many of us do, by selecting couture clothing and accessories for the demanding celebrity boss she works for, who's just too busy to pick out her own clothes. And just as you and I do, Stuart stops by Cartier every so often and picks up a few €100,000 worth of jewelry, tosses it in a shoulder bag, puts it over her shoulder, and rides her scooter through the streets of Paris. Every year there are complaints about how few female directors make it into competition. This year there were 3 films directed by women in the lineup of 21, but film after film showcased an amazing performance by a lead actress. Now, Sonia Braga, I can't say enough good things about her, is in nearly every frame of Aquarius, an excellent film from Brazil. She's sharp and independent and sexy as the last tenant of an apartment building who refuses to leave, even though panting developers are planning to knock it down and replace it with luxury housing. And Ruth Negga was superb as real-life Mildred Loving, a black woman living in the state of Virginia who broke the law in 1958, and she, when her white husband Richard got married in Washington, D.C. The miscegenation laws on the books, this was very real, made the mixing of races a crime with a prison sentence. Any children they had would be considered bastards. Their case went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Writer-director Jeff Nichols tells the story with breathtaking sensitivity, and the acting could not be better. But the jury passed over these 2 astonishingly fine performances to reward Jaslyn Jones, an actress from the Philippines, for her role as a mother in Manila trying to make ends meet by selling drugs on the side, and the corruption she's up against when she and her husband get arrested. A good performance, but perhaps not as dazzling as the other 2 I mentioned.
Well, as you mentioned, there are 21 prizes, but only 21 films, in competition, but only a handful of prizes. Not every film can get a prize necessarily. And one film that didn't get recognised by the jury, but did get recognised by critics, as far as I understand, was Elle by Dutch director Paul Verhoeven. That's coming out this week in France, Lisa.
I love this movie to pieces. Elle starts out with a businesswoman named Michelle being assaulted and raped on the floor of her own home in the well-to-do Paris suburbs. And whether in Holland, in Hollywood, or now in France, Verhoeven has never been shy about depicting narrative complexity and violence. He also has a wicked sense of humor, as he proved in Basic Instinct, RoboCop, Total Recall, Showgirls, Starship Troopers, and Black Book. So the Cannes shorthand, unfortunately, quickly became that Elle is a rape comedy. As far as I know, rape is never funny, in much the same way that being stoned to death or beheaded is rarely a laugh riot, shall we say. But Elle isn't about rape. It's about the main character, Michelle, and how she takes the experience in stride. For example, if anything remotely similar happened to me, I would call the police. Michelle doesn't. It turns out she has completely understandable reasons for finding law enforcement personnel distasteful. When somebody has a lot of daunting experiences in their past, we say they have a lot of baggage. Michelle is practically a luggage emporium onto herself. She has so many striking incidents on her emotional CV, which are slowly revealed. And it's a story full of amoral behavior, but it's also a fable. So many crises get flung at Michelle, and Verhoeven handles the filming so well that you, as a viewer, just end up thinking, geez, some people lead really interesting lives, rather than, you have got to be kidding me.
Well, this, in fact, was Verhoeven's first film in French, and that's already a challenge, enough of a challenge. It's based on a French novel, and we spoke to the director, who explained just why Elle should have been made in France, and was, indeed, with a word from Isabelle Huppert as well.
The scriptwriter is American. When Said Ben Said, the producer, sent me the book, we decided that it should be in English. I mean, to have a bigger audience, to make it international. But it became clear very fastly, financially and artistically, that it was impossible to get financial partners or to get any actors to do it. They were not doing it. They were refusing to work on a movie that, in their eyes, was probably politically highly incorrect.
C'est pas la première fois qu'ils se manifestent. Tu pirates les ordinateurs perso de tous les employés.
C'est grave comme infraction.
Mais il y a un fou qui rôde. Non mais les fous, j'ai l'habitude. C'est ma spécialité. Tu t'es bien foutu de ce que je pouvais penser, hein. J'étais dans un déni étrange, mais maintenant j'y vois clair.
La plus dangereuse, Michel, c'est tout de même toi.
Moi, je trouve que le personnage est assez féministe.
I think the character is quite feminist, actually. I see her in a positive rather than a scandalous light, although I understand very well that it could shock.
Même si je conçois très bien que ça puisse choqué, mais ça c'est aussi la force du
But that's also the strength of Verhoeven's filmmaking,
Verhoeven, et c'est évidemment une porte
to be on the razor's edge and take a risk that is obviously not quite
de
politically correct.
prendre le risque qu'on soit évidemment pas tout à fait dans le politiquement correct.
Well, we're moving from fiction to fact now, an Israeli documentary that charts the life and times of a choreographer. It's called Mr. Gaga, and it's out in France on June 1st.
I'm embarrassed to say that I had never heard of Israeli choreographer Ohad Naharin until I saw this film. And what a film it is, and what a life trajectory. He's now in his 60s. He is a completely self-taught dancer. He didn't start professional training until he was 22, which is unheard of. He was tapped by Martha Graham, by Maurice Béjart. He left both of those troupes because he had so many ideas of his own. This is an extraordinarily interesting life, and even if you don't care one bit about modern dance, I can't recommend it highly enough.
Okay, great. Now, we're already on French screens. Another film that's been released just after it was screened at Cannes is Pedro Almodovar's 20th film, Julieta. I've seen it myself, and I think we can say it's a melodrama.
You think so? Yes, it is every bit a melodrama. It is a thoroughly enjoyable, bittersweet tale about a long-standing misunderstanding between a mother and a daughter. Two different actresses play the title character, decades of apart. The film starts with the professor of classics, Julieta, packing up her Madrid apartment because she plans to move to Portugal with her lover. And then she meets somebody in the street who changes all of her plans, sends us into a flashback with Hitchcockian overtones. It's marvelous.
Well, we'll leave you with a clip of Julieta, some of that melodrama and typical Almodovarian colour, I think. Remember, you can get more culture news on our website, and you can check out Encore on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.
Siempre supe que había algo importante en tu vida que nunca compartiste conmigo.
Lo que muy poca gente.
Querida Antía, voy a contarte todo lo que no tuve ocasión de contarte, porque eras una niña, porque me resultaba demasiado doloroso, o por simple pudor.